Imagine spending months, or even years, around someone who makes you question your own reality. You say something happened. They tell you it didn't. You remember exactly what they said. They insist you misunderstood. You feel hurt. They tell you you're too sensitive. You finally get angry. And somehow, you're the one apologizing. Eventually, something strange happens. You stop trusting yourself. You replay conversations in your head. You analyze every message. You wonder whether you were actually the problem. And even after you leave, your mind doesn't immediately feel free. Because leaving a harmful relationship and recovering from it are two different things. And sometimes, the person is gone, but the relationship is still happening inside your head. So why does narcissistic abuse affect people so deeply? And why can recovery feel like rebuilding your own mind? Let's start with something important. Narcissistic abuse is commonly used to describe emotionally abusive patterns associated with narcissistic traits or narcissistic personality disorder. But not every selfish, arrogant, manipulative, or difficult person has narcissistic personality disorder. And abuse doesn't require a diagnosis. What matters is the pattern: manipulation, devaluation, control, gaslighting, emotional punishment, constant criticism, or making you feel responsible for someone else's behavior. And when those patterns continue long enough, your brain starts adapting to them. Not because you're weak, because that's what brains do. They adapt to repeated environments. Imagine walking into a room where a loud alarm randomly goes off. At first, you don't know when it will happen, so you stay alert. Then it happens again and again. Eventually, you stop relaxing completely. You're listening, watching, waiting. You start noticing tiny changes: a facial expression, a change in someone's voice, a pause in a text message, a door closing slightly harder than usual. You become an emotional weather forecast. Is it going to rain today? Except the weather is another person's mood, and you're somehow expected to predict it. This is one reason people recovering from emotionally abusive relationships can experience hypervigilance. Their nervous system may have learned that small changes in another person's behavior could precede conflict. So, even after leaving, the brain may continue scanning for danger. A notification arrives. Your stomach drops. Someone's tone changes. You immediately wonder what you did wrong. Someone doesn't respond. Your mind starts constructing 12 possible explanations. And somehow, all 12 are your fault. Your brain isn't necessarily trying to make you miserable. It's trying to protect you using an old strategy. Watch carefully. Predict the danger. Avoid the conflict. Survive the situation. But there's another problem. What happens when the danger disappears? The brain doesn't instantly delete the habit. Imagine walking through a forest for years where you had to constantly watch for danger. Then one day, you move somewhere completely safe. The forest is gone, but you still look behind you. That's recovery. Part of healing is teaching your nervous system that the environment has changed. And that can take time. One of the hardest parts is often rebuilding trust in yourself. Because emotional manipulation can make you question your own perceptions. Maybe I exaggerated. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe I was too emotional. Maybe they were right. Maybe I caused it. The questions keep coming. And this is where recovery becomes more than simply moving on. You have to begin separating what happened from what you were told happened. Those are not always the same thing. Think about your memory like a photograph. Someone can tell you the photograph is wrong. They can criticize the lighting. They can insist you imagine the entire scene. But eventually, you need to look at the evidence for yourself. What actually happened? What did you feel? What was said? What pattern kept repeating? What did you tolerate because you were trying to keep the relationship peaceful? And perhaps most importantly, what would you tell a friend if they described the exact same situation to you? Because people are often much kinder to others than towards themselves. You might look at a friend and immediately recognize the problem. You shouldn't have been treated that way. But when the story is yours, suddenly you're the defense attorney for the person who hurt you. You explain their childhood, their stress, their trauma, their difficult circumstances, their intentions, everything except your own experience. Understanding someone doesn't require excusing what they did. Both things can exist. You can understand why someone behaves a certain way and still decide that you don't want that behavior in your life. That's an important part of recovery. Boundaries. A boundary isn't a punishment. It isn't revenge. It isn't a way to control another person. A boundary is information about what you will do. If this happens, I will leave the conversation. If you speak to me that way, I will end the call. I won't continue this relationship under these conditions. The focus moves away from controlling them and back toward controlling your own choices. And that shift can be incredibly powerful, because abuse often makes your world revolve around someone else's reactions. Will they be angry? Will they leave? Will they blame me? Will they forgive me? Will they suddenly become loving again? Recovery slowly changes the question. What do I want? What do I feel? What do I consider acceptable? What kind of relationship do I want? At first, those questions can feel strangely uncomfortable, because you've spent so much time monitoring someone else that you've forgotten how to monitor yourself. And then there is the part nobody likes talking about. You may miss them, even if they hurt you, even if you know leaving was necessary, even if you remember exactly why you left. You can still miss the good moments, the attention, the affection, the version of them you hoped they would become. This doesn't mean you made the wrong decision. Human attachment is complicated. The brain doesn't store relationships as a simple spreadsheet labeled good person, bad person, delete. Unfortunately, your brain is not customer support. There is no cancel subscription button. You can know intellectually that someone was harmful, while emotionally still feeling attached. That's why recovery isn't about forcing yourself to stop caring overnight. It's about allowing the attachment to weaken while building something healthier in its place. Your own identity, your friendships, your interests, your routines, your goals, your sense of competence, your ability to make decisions without asking someone else whether you're allowed to. And slowly, you begin noticing something. You don't check your phone every 30 seconds anymore. You don't rehearse conversations before having them. You don't automatically apologize for everything. You don't spend hours trying to decode someone's mood. Silence doesn't immediately feel like danger. And being alone doesn't feel like failure. That's progress. Not necessarily dramatic progress. Sometimes recovery is incredibly boring. You have a normal Tuesday. You make breakfast. You go outside. You work. You laugh at something stupid. You sleep. Nothing terrible happens. And your brain quietly learns, nothing happened. Then another day passes. Again, nothing happens. And another. Eventually, safety stops feeling unfamiliar. Your nervous system doesn't have to stay on guard every second. But recovery doesn't mean you'll never be triggered again. A certain song might bring back a memory. A particular phrase might make your stomach tighten. Someone's behavior might remind you of the past. That doesn't mean you're back at the beginning. A trigger is not necessarily a relapse. Sometimes it's simply your brain recognizing something that resembles an old threat. The goal isn't to become someone who never feels fear. The goal is to become someone who can feel fear without automatically obeying it. And this is where support can matter enormously. Trusted friends, family, support groups, and, when appropriate, a qualified mental health professional. Because you don't have to reconstruct your sense of self completely alone. Especially if the relationship involves significant trauma, professional support can help you understand your reactions and develop healthier coping strategies. There is also something else recovery requires: patience. Because you may spend months blaming yourself for not healing faster. Which is almost funny. You survived a situation that taught your nervous system to stay alert, and then you criticize yourself because your nervous system didn't immediately become perfectly relaxed. Your brain isn't a light switch. It's a learning system. It learned one environment. Now it has to learn another. That takes repetition, safety, support, and time. Eventually, you may notice that the biggest change isn't that you hate the person anymore. It isn't that you finally found the perfect explanation for everything they did. It isn't even that you forgot what happened. It's that their behavior no longer determines how you see yourself. You remember, but you don't live there. You can think about the past without becoming trapped inside it. You can recognize manipulation without immediately questioning your own reality. You can say no without feeling like you've committed a crime. You can walk away from disrespect without needing the other person to understand why. And perhaps the most important change, you stop asking, how do I make them treat me better? And start asking, why am I accepting this? That question changes everything, because recovery isn't about becoming cold. It isn't about trusting nobody. It isn't about assuming everyone is secretly manipulative. It's about developing something more useful: discernment, knowing that kindness doesn't require self-abandonment, that empathy doesn't require tolerating abuse, that forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation, and that loving someone doesn't mean giving them unlimited access to you. The relationship may have taught you to doubt yourself. Recovery teaches you to listen to yourself again. At first, that voice may be very quiet, but it is still there, and every healthy decision makes it a little louder. You set a boundary. You keep it. You recognize a red flag. You walk away. You make a decision. You trust it. You survive the discomfort. And slowly, Your brain collects new evidence. I can protect myself. I can leave. I can say no. I can trust my perception. I can build relationships that don't require me to disappear inside them. And one day, you may realize something extraordinary. The goal was never to become the person you were before the abuse. You're not going backward. You're building someone new. Someone who understands their limits. Someone who recognizes unhealthy patterns earlier. Someone who knows that peace shouldn't feel suspicious. Someone who doesn't need chaos to feel connected. And someone who finally understands being loved should never require you to lose yourself.